Can everyone see that? Yeah. Right. I'm going to just start, and not sort of basics with how we're going to write it. We're just going to look at the first bit, which is what is news and what is not news, because this is usually what confuses a lot of companies when they start looking around for a press release, thinking what we're going to do, and they're going to wait for one sensational piece of news. It's important to understand that almost everything in your business, everything you do, is probably worthy of a press release, just not all of the time. So anything based in fact can be news to the right people, the right media. And that's critical, knowing your audience and that, but we're going to come back to that later, that it isn't just about writing. You have to think of a lot of things. And the first one is things like new client wins. So that's an obvious one. You win a new piece of business, you win a new client, you want to tell the world. New orders, even. You pick up a new order, it could be from a new client, it could be from an existing client, but if it affects your business, if it's a decent number, these are the sorts of things. New people is a popular one. Recruiting new people, new teams, new heads of departments, all sorts of top people. But also, it could be apprentices, new people on a production line. It really doesn't matter. More businesses now are trying to make it obvious that they're a whole team, and it's not just the personalities at the top of the business that matter, that everyone matters. And promotions again. So whether you bring in new talent in, it's good to tell people, but it's also good to tell people that you're nurturing the talent within your organization and you're happy to spread the news that you're promoting people. It's again good for your customers, good for prospects to see sort of continuity within the business, that there's knowledge being retained. And new ways of doing things is popular at the minute. You want to talk about a new process in production or manufacturing that's bringing productivity benefits, it's bringing efficiency benefits, it might be reducing cost, carbon footprint, doesn't matter. These are all things that might be sector specific, but they might be of interest to clients and prospects in particular. New equipment, I get this one a lot. I have several engineering type clients who will say, oh, we've just ordered a new machine. Is that newsworthy? And in and of itself, probably not, unless you're the person who sold them the machine. But when we dig down, of course, what we get to is why they've bought the new piece of equipment. And that's where the real press release is why they've bought the new equipment. It's usually because they've won a new order or they're expanding their production. And that's when we can wrap the whole thing up in a story. Awards, obviously. I can have another conversation about how effective they are and whether people seek out award-winning organisations, but they're good for morale amongst other things. Qualifications is an important one. If you're training people within your organisation, they're getting better at the job they do and they can prove it, then tell the world and tell the world that you're investing in your people and they're getting qualifications to do the job better, with the benefit to the client that when they're slightly better at it, they might be more efficient, they might save them money. Funding grants, private equity investments, etc. Anything where you're getting money into the business that's allowing you to do other things, whether it's a complete flex in a different direction or whether it's to pursue a new process or again, your new equipment. Apprentices is quite a good one at the moment, to show that investment in the future, that you intend to be around. That's what it tells people. We intend to be here for many years to come. Mergers, acquisitions, MBO and partnerships, that's quite a big one, obviously. You only get to write that once or twice. They're big, they're important. But we'll come to something later about why you might write about those in advance of them happening. And redundancies, closures and criminality, they might not be press releases that you actually put out to promote the business, but they may well be in the sense that the media can be, if there's a vacuum, it will fill with someone saying something. So if those are likely to affect your business, you are best to own that conversation with the media, and you're best to get statements out there. So don't think always a press release is a positive promotion at sometimes. And it's so just about anything, that's what I'm trying to get across, that just about anything can be news to the right audience at the right time with the right message. So is that broad enough? Does everyone sort of, that's it, anything? We can make anything work is basically what I'm saying. You can do this. And then the next thing to consider is, what are you trying to achieve with the release? And that's important. Sometimes there are ego releases where a managing director or someone just wants to let everyone know how great he is, how wonderful she's done at X, Y, Z. But what we're trying to always ask ourselves is, what do we hope to achieve? And that's basically it. We're trying to influence the future decisions of clients, customers and prospects. we're imparting knowledge, we're all sorts of things, but that's what we hope will the ultimate outcome is, to influence their future decisions of who they work with, who they buy from, and who they support. You're trying to attract the interest of investors, buyers and sellers. And that's when I said a bit earlier about the MBO and the buyouts. We've worked with clients when they're thinking of doing a management buyout. So we change the tack of what we're trying to do with the media. We will change the tone of the releases and we'll make them far more bullish. And we might use an alternative version of the truth at times when we're talking about figures, just because it can have all these things. And some people will do it just to annoy their competitors, because what often happens, what precipitates many conversations about press releases, is the fact that you constantly see one of your competitors in the media, and it can be very annoying. We've all had it, and sometimes they don't even seem to have as good a news as you've got. They're not doing as well as you are. You know it. You know in your industry, and that sometimes is the reason that people want to get it, and they just want to annoy them and say, "Yeah, we're here too. I want to put a marker in the sand." And that's been. I was saying earlier to Charlotte, we're very busy at the minute, and this is a particular reason, because people, through the whole pandemic, they just want to remind people they're still around, they're still in business, and it can just be where we maybe haven't got a major news story, and we're just trying to get news out into the media across a range of titles, just to say we're still here, we can still do what you want us to do. And I've just had it with a law firm there, where we're trying to highlight the benefits of a job within the business, because everyone knows recruitment consultants can be expensive. So what a lot of companies are trying to do is just to make it look better that they're a nice place to work. And that's quite easy to do with a series of releases, talking to young people and getting some of them quoted in the release, and just to highlight nice things about the business and spark debate amongst your peers. I'm going to talk later. There's not every press release has to be factual in the sense of it's just a piece of news. It might be what you might call a press release. We would call a thought leadership or an opinion piece, and that's just to spark debate. You just after comments and opinions of other people to so you know where you are in the world, and the awareness of your business amongst the media. And again, this is critical if you're thinking of doing your own first few press releases. Often this is the most important thing. The media have never heard of you. They don't know anything about you. They don't think about your business. And the first couple of times you send a press release, you're hoping for page 3 of the Times. It's not going to happen unless it's criminality. So it might be that you just need to fire off a few small press releases, cut your teeth, just to get onto the list, so that local media, that local paper, the local online or the local trade magazine that matters to your sector are aware of you and know that you're out there and you are posting news and you're successful at what you do. And once we've got that and we now know what we're trying to achieve, you've got to include your key messages. And that's not just we've got a new piece of equipment. And it's going to be things like these, having recently announced its best annual figures. These are the sort of figures that the sort of things you're after with a key message. That might well be the main message. You want to announce your annual figures. It might be a newly installed managing director, Joe Bloggs, who joins from. And sometimes with things like this, you're with this kind of a message, you're not just trying to tell them the one piece of news. You're also trying to modify what you're announcing to give people a greater flavour of what you're doing and what your business is about. The one with the managing director, Joe Bloggs, often happens in particular I work with law firms and they want to bring in a new partner. Very often we'll have to include where they've come from to get around things like, that they're sort of trying to stop them poach the business and they're not allowed to contact anyone, so that their previous clients can get in touch. And there's an excuse to say, yeah, I know I saw the press release, rather than, so it's just a way of getting around the rules. This new client, the third win in as many months. Again, it's just a new client one, but tell them if you've won previous ones as well. So these key messages are showing a growth. You're on an upward trajectory. It doesn't have to just be we've won a new client. You can modify each statement. The new contract building the firm's accepted preeminence in the sector. Generally speaking, if you're talking with the trade media, you might get away with almost anything when you're saying about your business. If you're writing and a journalist contacts you from a national or from the television, they'll want you to source everything. You'll have to prove it. They'll have to have heard of you and all the rest of it. But most of the trade journals are on your side. They want to support your business. Even the local paper, they want you to do well. And if you want to call yourself a firm, you're accepted as a preeminent in the sector, fine, do it. Just call yourself. Renowned is a key word with a history measured in centuries. These are all lines I've used. I'll be honest, I'll put my hands up. They're all lines we've used, and because it's, instead of just law firm recruits, we're talking about a renowned law firm. So people think they should have heard of you. And then a history measured in centuries. And we're doing one with the law firm now. They're celebrating their 175th anniversary. So it's, again, just modifying the key message, so that we end up with telling people, oh, I should have heard of these people. And if it feels awkward, because some people don't like to do it, add the information, add it in a quote. So get someone, rather than talking in the third person at the start about a renowned law firm, well, who says that? Give it to someone in the quote. So when you're quoting someone, give it to them to say. So it's gratifying to add yet another widget manufacturer to our ever-growing client list. Again, you modifying the first statement. We've added another manufacturer, which in itself is the press story, but we've added the modifier to our ever-growing client list. And again, if the media pick this one up and they look at it, if they haven't read the other ones, they'll think, ever-growing, oh, okay. So they'll maybe even look back at some others, or they'll certainly keep an eye on you because you've got an ever-growing client list. You're obviously a business that they should take note of. Adding talented individuals to our already award-winning team benefits our clients. You've just modified, you've added some new person, new team, award-winning. They don't need to know what the award is. They might be going to seek it out on your website and look at what you're about, but you've already modified that statement and told them that you've got talented individuals and they're joining an award-winning team. And accreditation, I didn't mention accreditations earlier with qualifications. Again, the ISOs, this sort of thing, when you get an ISO 9001 or 27001, these are important accreditations and you should tell everybody. And you can also, if you've got a competitor who hasn't got it, this is how you point at that fact by saying we lead the way where our competitors can only hope to follow. That would be a hard statement to make as a statement, but to give it to someone within the business to say, that's fine. It's not a problem. So you now know the purpose of what we're trying to do. We know what we're trying to say, and you've got your key messages. But the thing now that will modify again your key message is who your audience is. And that's again critical. Who it is that you're trying to talk to, who you think you're talking to. And that will obviously be defined largely by the media you're going to target. We generally, I work with a lot of professional service firms, which means we can target almost all of the trade journals, because whether it's accounting or law, it matters to everybody. If you're very specific, if you manufacture something in a sector, you might only have 2 or 3 maybe trade journals, trade magazines, online resource that would be interested. So you probably pretty much know your audience. And so you've got to think about who's going to see it when it's published, shared and promoted, because a lot of them will promote it. And when it's shared amongst people, who's going to see it? So you know your audience, because it's going to affect how you write. Will investors be impressed by your growth and innovation? So if you're going to talk, if you're looking, like I said about the MBO and something, you talk about growth, innovation, your future plans, how great the future looks, because you're trying to impress an investor rather than necessarily attract a new client. Will new talented individuals see your success and decide to join? Again, when we're talking about award-winning teams and growth, planning for the future, these are all things that if you're writing just because you want a new client, or you're writing because you're thinking, I need to say about our apprenticeship program, about our the training we offer internally, because you're hoping to attract new prospects to come and work for you and sort of circumvent the normal recruitment process. That's just, yeah, it's a sales pitch I use sometimes with some of my clients, which is just to demoralize your competitors. If you are the one that's constantly in the news every few weeks, news release, blog, talking about all the great stuff you're doing, client wins, you're bringing new people on board, you're promoting people within, it can really have an effect on your people, but also on other people. We won't hover on that one too long. And that's a key one. That's central to an awful lot of the press releases we do, is you're trying to identify a problem and solve it that someone else will recognize. That they are reading that press release because you've solved the problem in 24 hours. What was the one I did the other day? You've agreed a lease on a new commercial property in under 14 days because they needed to get in before Brexit and all the rest of it. These are the sort of things where someone's going to be sitting there nodding along while they're really thinking, that's the exact same problem we have. It could be laptops, it could be IT problems, cloud, moving to the cloud, all these sorts of things that you solve a problem for someone rather than just we sold something or we provided a service. It's kind of like a case study, but it can be written as a press release initially. And that will usually, the problem solving will come in the quote you're going to include potentially from the client, if they all agree to be in your press release, which is always an added bonus. So remember what we've achieved so far, and then we know what you want to say and why, know what audience you're aiming at, and know what outcome you expect when the release is read. It's as sort of simple as that. That's where you've kind of got all that in your head, and now you know what you want to write, why you want to write it, and who you're writing for. Any questions? Anyone? Everyone's keeping up?
I just have a question, David, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It's just in regards to, so if you've got a like a general press release that you're writing, say for a client win as an example, would you, so if you're sending that to, for example, a trade journal and a news outlet, would you tailor them to that different audience, even though it's just a general news release? It's not a thought leadership piece, but it's just a client win or a new member of staff, or?
Yeah, I would. If it, because it's, I'll be honest now, it's different. If you're an agency like us, you might be doing this a lot of times a day, talking to a lot of media. If you've got your business and you want to write a press release and it matters, it's worth the time, even if you just reorder your paragraphs. And it could be that you want to put a paragraph nearer the top that's actually the quote from the client rather than yourselves. But yeah, I would always personally try and do it. We can use mass email type, you know, PR. We have a lot of tools. We can send out one press release to 300, 400 journalists or editors in one go. We don't. As an agency, we still write one email to one journalist, to one editor, because it's the response, because it looks personal, looks like we've made an effort. And we will sometimes, if we're trying to sell something in, we'll read their publications in advance and say, we see you cover stories from widget manufacturers. We thought you'd be interested in our story because, and so it's personal to them. That's how you build a relationship. If you haven't got the time, then yeah, clearly no, just send it. But I think it's personally, it's worth the time.
Thank you.
We'll get on at the end as to what the benefit might be. Anything else for any more? Okay, so now we're getting to the sort of the meat now, I suppose, and that's actually drafting. We've done all that preamble. Now you're actually getting to the meat of it, and this is quite old school. I appreciate. Start with pen on paper. I still say to people that there's a lot of studies been done about learning and in how pen and writing on paper. That we're sort of losing it as an art, and yet I still find it's very a creative way. It really sparks your thoughts. And if you get a blank sheet of paper and write, I want to draft a press release about this new product or this new tool or the efficient new process we've introduced, start to sketch it out on a piece of paper. And I always say to people, the best way is write it in little paragraphs or bullets until you think you've covered everything. And then it's quite easy, which I've done before now. You can rip it into strips and replace it until they're in the right order. And you're just sitting there, you're just listing the key points at this stage. You've got that kind of beforehand about what you want to say, your key messages to include, and it might be more than one, it might be three, it might be four. You know who you're writing for, the audience you're trying to impress, and what you're going to try and tell them. So just list those key points. List the message you want to include, which doesn't have to just be that. It could be we've got the new machine, but we've also got to buy the new machine because we've won a new contract. We won a new contract because we fulfilled an order. And these are the other key messages, those modifiers. And yeah, don't worry. A lot of people get hung up on the title of their press release. Don't worry. It usually gets changed. It's what editors and sub-editors do. They get paid for it. So they kind of do it. And people put great long titles, underline 28 points, and they've spent a day thinking about the title. 9 times out of 10, it'll get changed. And don't be too clever with the titles either, because you think it's funny and nobody else does. So, but I like a pun as much as the next one. And don't worry too much about fonts, copy size, header, footer, and all that. I still get every now and again a press release passed to me, and it'll have embargo dates on it and underline and all these kind of details. And to be fair, most of the editors we deal with really don't care. The minute you send them something, it's going. If they're going to use it, they don't want things that are embargoed and sending it 3 or 4 days. If anyone knows what that means, it means in the old days, because you weren't sure about the post, you had to allow for it to arrive in plenty of time. So if it was a big press launch of something on, say, March the 1st, you'd send it out in February and tell them this doesn't go live till March the 1st. But now pretty much if you send it, if they like it, they'll use it straight away, especially if it's online and they've got a space, it'll just go up. So if you don't preempt anything by hoping that they'll sit on it for a day or two, only send it when you're ready for something to happen. And so don't worry about what it looks like or anything else. And to be fair, you're only going to print it out. You're only going to send it mostly as an attachment. I can't even imagine the last time I sent one out actually in the post. I dread to think. Lovely days. We used to send CDs with photographs on and all those lovely things and signing letters and all sorts. It's a lot of change over 20 years. And then this is a controversial one, right? So your story's engaging and don't get too worried about the English. I see people all the time, they get a bit nervous about split infinitives and ending in prepositions and starting sentences with and all this. And for the most part, if people understand what you mean, that's good enough for most people. And we get a lot of, I keep saying law firms in particular, you've got lawyers, they're very particular about the English, they're very particular about semicolons and colons in lists and how bullet points must have a semicolon at the end for that, except the last bullet point, which has a full stop. To be honest, they're right, but really nobody's that bothered. In a legal journal, they probably are. In the real world, in a trade journal, no one is. They just need to know that information and get it across. And they don't want hereuntofores, herewiths, and herunders. It just wants to be fairly plain English. And if your whole world is full of acronyms and certain terms, but you're writing for that audience who will understand them, feel free to use them. The usual rule is you do it longhand first time, put the brackets, put the acronym or the initialism, and then move on with the initials just so it's easy for people to read. But generally, if it's your sector, that's fine. And then when Charlotte said about, would you change it? That's when I might, if I was writing the same story for a different audience that didn't understand my world. So I'd written for a technical journal about the process, but then I wanted to let the general business media know that we'd got this new process that meant we'd employed 6 new people. That would be slightly different release. And I'd probably look at whether I use the technical terms. And it only really matters that it makes sense. If it makes sense and conveys the message you want, good enough. I've never yet had an editor send a piece back and say, well, that's rubbish. You know, it just doesn't happen. They're happy. They just want the information. And while I'm on it, I'll tell you that the trade media in particular, they're struggling a bit because of COVID, but as they get back in the office, it's voracious. They need your content. The magazine, to get your business into their magazines can be tough, limited space, and they're trying to sell advertising, but they've got websites, they've got online presence, and they need to drive content constantly there. So when you think that your business is either too small or not important enough, it is, because they want your content, they want to hear from you, and they want a broad spread. Most of the trade media we deal with, they want a broad spread. Yeah, they want to hear from £1 billion law firm, Allen and Overy or whatever at the top, but they're also interested in the 4-partner firm down the road and how they've managed to flex, or they've always made their law firms always been agile because they all work from home anyway. So they're keen. It's not just big stuff at the top that they're interested in. That's just something I try to do. Most of my press releases, 500 words is enough. If you can get it on, if it's going to drag on for thousands, it probably is more than one story, or it's not a press release. It's then more likely to be a case study, or it's an opinion piece. And that just helps me be disciplined if I can get it onto one A4 sheet. And it's usually 10 or 11 point, it's 500 words. If I start going on to the next page, I know I've gone too far. So now we're getting into the real nitty gritty of this now. And these, I'm just going to put up some examples really of what I mean when I'm saying about modifiers. And the opening paragraph is the key one, because I said as an attachment, typically we will copy the body when we're finished and we've got our 440 word press release. It's been signed off by the client. We're happy with it. Everyone agrees it's right. We might put it as an attachment as well, but generally we'll copy that into the body of the email. We're trying to stop the editor having to open email attachments. A lot of them now are working remotely. They're on the move. They're out doing an interview or something. They'll just flick through it on their phone. They'll look at it and think, that's interesting, I'll have that. If they've got to open attachments, it can be quite tricky for them. So a lot of them will prefer it as a body copy. And to be fair, it's a relief for all of you now, because in the old days, we used to have to ring them up and you used to try and sell them the story. And that was frightening because some of them were brutal. So just sending an email and hoping you get lucky is cool. And then so these just a few examples of this opening paragraphs. So that's one is a law firm, advise new client for Hoke. So immediately what I'm trying to do there is set the scene for the editor. They're a specialist real estate law firm. Human recently advised new client, 10-year lease in their first venture into the UK, so post-Brexit. So that's a lot of information, that first paragraph. But it's telling, I think we've got some coverage and it tells everyone who reads it quite a lot of information in just that one paragraph. Now, in the old days, when we were going in newspapers, it was always get it in the first paragraph because they'll cut it from the bottom. So you had to go down in descending order of importance. And to be fair, that probably still holds true today, because it's less about cutting to fit in a column on a newspaper and it's more about interest. People are so sort of engaged and disengaged quickly these days that they'll go down and it'll end up being just ignored. So you're trying to get it all into that first one. Again, Holborn, one of the UK's leading providers of commercial air, has appointed out as following a good year. So that's what I was going back to earlier. So already we've got leading provider of commercial air conditioning. Whether they're a leading provider, I've no idea, if I'm honest. If I hold my hands up, no idea, but I just call them that because it sets a scene. They're a big enough company to carry it off. They run some major contracts, so I can always back it up. They've got 2 divisions and following a good year as its general manager. So really, there's a lot going on in there again. One of the UK's leading providers of over-the-counter pet medicines has announced 2 new products for all types of small animals. Again, information overload in the first paragraph. I'm just trying to catch an editor's attention and the reader if they use it. And London-based high-tech law firm, Cardium Laws, it's Spanish. So again, that's hopefully telling people London-based because they only want really work in London. They're a high-tech law firm because they're a very agile, small firm. They mostly work from home anyway. They set the business up that way to be like that. 2 new arrivals welcoming and the firm's latest legal assistant. So you can tell there that they're investing in youth, newly qualified. The firm's latest legal assistant tells you they must have already recruited one previously. And we've expanded its property and litigation team. So for me, there's a huge amount of information in that just one paragraph for an editor to look at. And hopefully he or she is going to say, that's interesting, I'll read the second paragraph. And that's a win for us. If they've gone from paragraph 1 to paragraph 2, they're starting to make a decision whether they actually want to use it. So we've caught their attention. So one I've picked out is Holborn. So the second paragraph for that one was the first, and then he joined in March 2019. So this was last year, to be fair. So it was only a year. A positive impact. So immediately we're telling people it's a successful business. It's moving on, it's growing, etc. Undertaking a thorough review of the whole business. So clearly it's a switched on business. It's got a plan. And he recommended and implemented changes to systems and processes to improve efficiency and operational effectiveness. So hopefully, when the editor has posted this for us, everyone's taken away from it that this is a thoroughly well sorted business. They've got a chap who they brought in to do the review. He's done it. He's taken a year to do it. Systems, processes, improve efficiency and operational effectiveness. All good for the clients. Clients are thinking, great, I want to work with a business that can support me and they're efficient and they're effective. These are all key words currently. And he's done such a good job. They've now appointed him as a director. So again, hopefully that's a lot of information, but it's all positive stuff. And it's all the sort of thing that if you were looking for a air conditioning or mechanical electrical engineering services company, you'd think, yeah, I might give them a call, because they sound like they know what they're doing. And then we go on to bring in the personality. So now we want to know, because Nick's very well known in the industry. So now we want people to know that Nick, he's not been there long, 3 or 4 years. Oh, that's Nick Scragg. Right. And it's been a challenging year. So that's where you're reflecting back a certain empathy for everyone. We know it's been challenging for everyone. And it's required every member of the team at home to go the extra mile. They're cliches, I know, but they work to ensure we continue to provide 24/7 support to our critical data center clients. Now, we didn't mention in the top data centers. In the first paragraph, we just talked about what they do. Now we've crept in critical data center clients and others like West Midlands Ambulance. So a cheap shot, I know, but NHS, protect the NHS, protect the emergency critical services. So we've got it into this press release because they do the critical temperature stuff for the West Midlands Ambulance Service headquarters, for the medicines, fridge chillers for the medicines. So you've now got a business, hopefully people are taking away from this, that it's a business that's been challenged like everyone else has, but they've all gone the extra mile. They've stepped up and they've kept their clients going. And that's kind of just from a technical point of view, those are my sort of just personal preferences, the way I like to do it. Holborn Managing Director Nick Scragg, all capitalised. Whether you turn it around next time and it's Nick Scragg, Managing Director of Holborn or Holborns, the only thing I'm trying to avoid, if I'm honest, is putting an apostrophe S on client names. So I'll always try and reword a sentence. It's just a personal thing that I've done for 20 years. So I'd be unlikely to put Holborns. It would normally be Managing Director of Holborn, Nick Scragg. I'd just change my sentences around, but that's just a personal phobia. And then, where am I going next? No one epitomised this spirit more. So now we're saying that that's why he's got the job. He worked long hours to support. We've already said 24/7. They're not a 24/7 business, but they get call outs. So they'll do critical cover while still working on the in-house project of getting Holborn Building Services, which is the other side of the business, which already looks very different to the one expected and planned for. So what we're just acknowledging there that the world has changed and that he's aware of that. Some people will just blithely carry on and just nothing's changed. They're not aware of what's changed in the world. But now he's saying, yeah, we accept it's different now. And that's partly because not many people want to go back to the office. And they're all, and the current thing is, just out of interest from this particular client, is a lot of people are nervous about sticking their air conditioning back on, even if it's air conditioning that they use for heating as well. They're a bit worried about blowing air around the building. So that's something we have to overcome, and we're doing that in other releases at the moment. And there were just some more paragraphs after that. We set the scene, which I shan't bore you with. I'm sure you've had enough already of my voice. And then, of course, after you've done another couple of paragraphs to introduce those various key messages that we talked about earlier that you were as modifying, you can then introduce the person in this particular case who's the subject of the press release, which is usually the thing with any recruitment or promotion release, because again you can give a sense of the business and a sense of their tone and how they feel. So again, new Holborn Building Service Director Andy Micklethwaite, there it all is in the capitalised, commented. And then this is where they get to say, and if someone knows this person, it's the sort of person who says, it's great, I love it here, then that's fine. Then put it. You can really just be as plain and as ordinary. You don't have to get someone like me to write it as immensely gratifying to my work. I will recognise, although you put me as a complete surprise, never my personal career path. It's just, it makes him feel a bit more humble. And I'm doing this for the support of the clients. I'm not doing this to get promoted. It's kind of where we're trying to, we're sort of trying to come from. And it's all very subtle, obviously. We move on to including some of our key messages. We go back again now to our key messages, just in case the people are still reading this press release. We've done them in the top. Nick Scragg's talked about stuff. We put some even in the first and the second paragraph. But just to knock that nail in a little bit further, we're now going to get the second person that we mentioned, the second personality, to just cover off some more of our key messages. So it's a good business. I mean, that's the way he talks, Andy. Yeah, it's a good business, this. And it is client obsessed, and it is determined. And now if you're a client reading this, you think, oh, that's nice. It's not about profitability, and it's not about winning new clients. He's saying we're client obsessed. The highest quality levels of service in both new and those we service. So now we've got across that they service as well as install new, which give the current worries of recirculating air in offices is proving a challenge. And there it is. So this is where I said about trying to identify a problem. By now, we've probably got someone reading this and going, yeah, that's right. We're a bit worried. We had a board meeting about this on Teams that said, did we want to put the aircon back on and warm the offices up? And everyone said, you know, I don't know. Should we have the aircon on or not? The advice is open the window, apparently, from the government. You can address it with UVC emitters and all sorts of stuff. But so now is the right time to formalise the quality of the business. Oh, there's a spelling mistake there. It's me copying it across. Is renowned for, and we're currently undertaking. So they haven't even got, and we'll get to this later. I'll say it now, and we'll cover it off again later. With every story that you think your business has, or organisation, I should say, it doesn't have to be a business. There are 3 opportunities with every story. That's telling people what you're going to do, telling them what you're doing, and telling them what you did. So here we're already setting up that we are undertaking. So if you want to deal with these people, you know they haven't got 9001 or 14,001 or indeed 45,001, but they are undertaking the processes to get them there. So again, we're telling people this is a business that has a plan for the future. So it's intending to be here in 2021 and beyond. And it knows the importance of these certifications, primarily because in the biggest contracts, these are all mandatory now. You've literally got to have every single one of them. So they are working their way through them. So even if we can't have it be on your tender list now, by Q1 of next year, 2021, you will be able to have us on the list because we will have all these in place. And then just a bit of fluff. I'm confident Goulburn has a bright future. Demand increases, the services we offer. Again, from installing cooling solutions in data centres to maintaining and upgrading cooling in offices. I'm just trying to get there. They do both. There's a big debate currently about whether on-premise servers and public and private cloud, there's going to be a bit of a switch back to private on-premise solutions. People like to have their own data. They'll go back to computer rooms. And so we're just lining that up saying, yeah, if you've got a computer room and you're going to have it put back in your own office, your own factory, we can do the cooling. We can set the whole thing up for you. So that we're just lining up some of our key messages just to kind of make sure that we've covered everything. And again, I think the whole release was probably 450, 480 words, which for the average person is probably about a 2.5 minute read. So it always looks a lot on paper when you look at it, but really most people are getting through stuff like 200 odd words a minute. So it's not a big read. There's sometimes you'll get links in. What the media will do if it goes online, they might put an ISO certification 9001. They might link to an article on their site. They might link to a provider who's they're advertising on the site that they do certifications, and so there might be some links inserted. Generally speaking, if you insert links, they'll get taken out. They'll blank format it. And so where did I go from there? So we've kind of covered everything. You'll see, and it does when I point at it now, I'm thinking, God, blimey, we don't have to bash on, but you have to, because some people, and you've probably done it now, you probably scan read a lot of it. You're not reading every word for word and assessing it. You're kind of just looking at a service, current worries, certification, ISO, maintain. So we just bang on a bit about installing cooling solutions. And so we've got all the messages that we needed in. I think we got them all in. And that is, when you get to the end, some people forget to do this. When you get to the end, tell people it's the end. Because often we put other stuff in, but I'm going to show you in a minute, and people forget to tell people, that's it, end. And it's usually quite important. It's nice to have that on the one page. So if an editor does open the attachment and sees one page of A4 and it says end at the bottom, he thinks great. And she thinks, oh, good, that's good. I can just finish it quickly and it's done and it's nice and clean. And then there's what we used to call the editor's notes. So you might just include as much, or you can put if they've only got one location, but you might put works out of 5 offices. They've got 5 locations across the country. All the additional information, it might be the number of people they've got. It might be that they've got a war. All sorts of stuff can go in that after the ends. And that'll be, if you've included, your press release, you think you've included everything. There might be stuff that the editor of the magazine or the website just wants to include to make their version slightly different to other people's. And that's a key factor, really, that I do get into conversation with people at times, that your press release is agreed internally to the nth degree, but when you let it out into the real world and give it to someone, the media have the right to do what they like with it. And if they want to cut it up and put other things in and take things out, they're perfectly entitled to. You can't go back to them and say, well, hang on, you've cut my name out, or you've taken off the bit about power mains, power upgrades. That's not how it works. If you want a perfect word for word replication of what you want to send, it's called an advert. And I've been told that on more than one occasion by an editor. They will chop it up and they'll do what they want with it. And it's probably now's the right time to also say, which is why it's worth considering if there's any skeletons in the cupboard. I've had it before with clients. Yeah, no, nothing to worry about. The press release goes out and it'll have former bankrupt. So where I've tried to dress up the new managing director as being all good things, they'll use former bankrupt and they'll link to a story from 8 years ago when he was declared bankrupt. And then you've got to do a huge amount of backfilling to try and cover that off. So it pays to just, before you go out into the real world and engage with the media, just make sure that you're not talking about something that could come back to bite you. And it's worth having that conversation if you're working with your board or with a senior partner or a manager. I know it's a difficult conversation, but it's still worth just asking. There's nothing that's going to cause an issue, is there, if we start to get out there and talk to the media? Generally speaking, there isn't. The trade media are not trying to catch you out. They want you to do well. They'll support your efforts to promote your business as long as it's not too salesy. If you're imparting knowledge and information, stuff about your business, fine. They'll let you do it all day long. They won't try and catch you out. And then we'll normally put that at the end, and it's for more information, to arrange an interview. Occasionally they will, because you'll have raised something that's interesting to the media, and they'll want to just confirm a point. Have you got a photograph? So it's always keen. And it's sometimes that even though you've sent it by email, they've opened the email and then they've printed off the attachment, and they're now sat at home and they don't just want to make a quick phone call. So always include your information and put a link back to the email. Don't assume they'll just reply to the email. It just pays to be on the paper copy as well. And then if you're doing sometimes you do a thought leadership piece, include a bio. They'll usually ask you, and you'll send a photograph of your associate solicitor or head of department, but then you'll just do about the author. Just so, again, what happens there is you're trying to include and trying to attract an editor to say, oh, I see he writes on, and I see he talks about, or he does this. Can he talk to us about something else? So again, you're just trying to include some other stuff in there. And it's always, you're just trying to sell. Just trying to sell stuff to people, and the media are no different. So include as much as you can, because after the ends, they can ignore it all if they want to. It's basically what ends says. The stuff above it is the stuff you want them to use. The stuff below the ends is stuff that they might want to use if they're interested in using it. If that makes sense?
I've just got a question, David, if that's all right.
Yeah, you carry on.
Before you do you do a call to action before you end the press release? So if it's a new service, would you then put a call to action and say, see our full service list here? Or I know you said that they tend to get rid of links, but
normally it'd be taken out
because it's the sales bit.
Yeah, because it's sales. It becomes a sort of so if it's an opinion piece, you have to be very careful. But the general thing is, so if you have X problem, we advise you it's worth speaking to an experienced lawyer or a lawyer who's experienced in, and then you name that specific, and obviously his bio tells you he's experienced in it. So the obvious thing is, give me a call. But if we so speak to me now, always gets taken out. Always gets taken out. The call to action you can try and include it and be fairly subtle about it. And it's usually just talking in the third person. And we have to put things like the best service providers will. And then all you do is you say, so in air conditioning, we might put the best service providers that worth speaking to will, and then you just list the services that only you do. They will do air conditioning, mechanical, electrical services, data center cooling, critical environments. So speak to someone who does all that, and they've just read that you do all that. So that's what we're hoping. But if you say, so give us a call, generally it will get taken out. or you'll get the sales team call you. Because that's the caveat for any of this, that when it goes to an editor, what often happens is it gets past the sales team and they'll come on trying to sell you some advertising or say, we'll include your press release for £50, £100, and that's been going for years. But it's now becoming more prevalent again because of the online and the power. They know that a backlink from their website to your website is a powerful tool. So they will often try and sell that to you. And you then have to make a call. Is it worth it? Is it worth £50 or £100 to have a high authority link from the leading title in the trade, your trade, back to your website, which will make Google very excited. So yeah, and again, there's no issue. The problem is it's a double-edged sword if you try and put a call to action in, because sometimes you're saying to the editor, I'm not experienced, so I'm trying it on. And that can make them then question whatever else was included, or it gets through and nobody actually bats an eyelid and it's in there. But generally speaking, the ones we've ever tried to include, usually at the insistence of a client, it will get taken out. So you just have to be very subtle about how you drop it in at the bottom. Anyone else? No. Oh, whizzing through actually, aren't we? Right. I think I'd go to piece, personalise and release. Let me just distributing press releases. Yeah. And that's probably when I said about don't worry about the title, it usually gets changed. This is probably worth spending some time on. Now, the big ad agencies years ago would have copywriters who did nothing but write email subject lines, trying to get people to open them, usually as sales calls for consumers. But the same is true when you're trying to get your release read by an editor. It's exactly that. You're trying to make it engaging and striking and stand out. I spoke to an editor the other day, and he's probably getting 600-700 emails like this on a daily basis, trying to pitch them stuff. So they've got a huge number to wade through. We're fortunate; we've been doing it a long time, so he tends to see our list jump up, and he thinks, "Oh, okay, I'll speak to WorkPR. I'll have a look at their email. What have they sent me? No, not interested, or I'm interested." But the rest of the time, you've got to try and get a subject line that A, isn't spammy, so it gets chucked into the junk folder. And some people will just be very basic about name the company and name what the story is, and just hope it gets picked up. But don't spend sort of a long time trying to get it perfect, but just try and address it as best you can, because it will make the difference. And it might be that it might not be the title you've put, but you're trying to just kind of cover a bit of the title. You're trying to tell him which company, just in case he knows them already. And then you're trying to give a bit of a hint at the story. Best annual lending figures amidst global pandemic. I mean, that ticks so many boxes. You'd really hope it was going to jump out. Entire private client team. These are all real ones, by the way, that we've had in the last few years. Where, again, I would think when we're sending that to some legal, they're going to go, an entire private client team, and you would hope they're going to open it to find out, because that's quite unusual. Again, another one, imagery pump. I'm hoping now up 32%. You want to know what that pump is. So again. And you can see now probably why we're trying to spend a bit of time on the subject line and then include the body copy in the email. So they can just click on the email, open it, you can read it in preview. They haven't got to open an attachment and start scrolling through Wade's embargoed this and headlines. It's just there, body copy, here it is. And some will just cut and paste straight out of the email, straight into the website, particularly if they're on WordPress. And again, cloud security business acquired to address growing risk. Now, hopefully your editor is reading that and thinking, what growing risk? What's the risk that's growing? So XYZ Technology, they've obviously bought a cloud security business. So they've obviously either not done cloud security before, or the risk is in cloud somewhere. So hopefully we're trying to just gain attention with it. Just make them think, oh, I might read that. That's quite interesting. And then he reads it and it's 400 words and it's about, I don't know what it was, an umpteen £1 million acquisition of a previous business and lots of key messages. But that was it. And that's just from that. because the thought that they're going to read 600-700 emails in one day and go through them line by line is just, it's not going to happen. So we're just trying to work on that. And the distribution then, the tough bit is, who are you sending it to? And now, if it's like us, I say, we've got all the manner of tools that we subscribe to that give us every industry contact there is across all the media, from the nationals. We've got bloggers, influencers by the thousand who write on every subject. It's all written down. It's all contactable for us. If you're doing it yourself and you're trying to get hold of 3 or 4 key contacts at the trade media, they're relatively easy to find. If you go on the website, it'll be there in the contacts. If you've got a magazine to hand, it'll be on the inside front cover, usually in the contents page. It'll say editorial contacts. If not, LinkedIn. If not, help a reporter out at Harrow. These sorts of things will give you the email address, and that's it. And I say to everyone, just send them an email. Just follow the plan we've just gone through. Send them an email. Don't pick the phone up. I can't. Yeah. We've done it in the past. We've all done it as junior PRs, and you've been told pick the phone up, and you've phoned an editor. They're on deadline, and we're trying to tell him a story about that's really not that important, and you've had your ears chewed off for about 30 seconds, and you don't do it again. It's just not worth it. And the email can just go round again. There's nothing to stop you sending the email more than once. Just be polite. Leave it 3 or 4 days and send it again if you've had no response. Don't ask for a read receipt, because they won't generally give you one. So it's really a bit pointless, and it's a bit demanding if they don't know you. These are the sort of things that you learn over time. They're not very keen on. And then after a while, you can send, we've done it with some thought leadership pieces. We've sent them on the 5th occasion. So we're probably now nearly 3.5 weeks from the initial launch of that little release. They'll say, "Oh, this is a great story. Sorry if I missed your earlier email." So it just proves, even with agencies, sometimes it's just luck, sometimes it's just timing, and it's just persistence. But if you send it and don't hear anything, don't get downhearted, because it doesn't necessarily mean they don't like the story. It just means they haven't seen it. And very often it can mean they've used it and just haven't told you, because that's another key thing that we get. The media doesn't have to respond. It won't come back to you and say, "Thanks very much, we're going to use this tomorrow," and all that. There won't often be a conversation. It will just get used, or it won't. If they want it changed, or they want to clear a fact with you, they'll come back. But if you've done everything that we've just said, and it's in the body copy, you've maybe attached a photograph, which we're going to get to, or you've attached some details about the product and the service, they've got everything they need, they'll just use it. And you'll know when it goes online, and we'll get to that. And you should monitor, obviously, to make sure, to see if they've used it. Sometimes they'll use it instantly, but often if it's going in a paper or a magazine, even, they'll put it in and they won't tell you. You don't get a free copy. They don't sort of send you one and say, "Thanks very much for that press release. Here's your gold-plated copy as a contributor." It will just be the first time you sometimes realise, unless you happen to be paying for a clipping service, it will be when you see the magazine next, or somebody gives it to you and says, "Oh, saw you in XYZ magazine." And very often they might not even be a magazine you sent it to, because a lot of the publishers are all interlinked, and you might send it to X, but they'll actually pass it internally to Y and say, "This might suit your audience better." And then it goes and appears in a different magazine altogether, and they've used it. And it all sounds a bit haphazard, and I'm afraid it can be, if I'm honest. It really can be. But persistence is key, and just don't get downhearted with them, and just keep sending them. Did you want to break now, Charlotte? Did people want to, or do you want me to plough on?
It's up to you. How's everyone feeling? Do they need a stop break for a drink, or I'm happy to carry on? I think we'll have to carry on.
Okay, I was going to say, because everyone's got tea and coffee already, haven't they, these days?
Yeah.
Used to working at home on Zoom and Teams. Yeah, so you've got the body copy, and the other thing that you'll nearly always want to send is a photograph. And that's just the need for good imagery. So you've appointed somebody, and I get this a lot, and they say, "Yeah, we've appointed Brian here." And I say, "I can't use a picture of Brian like that. It's bad enough if we had to use that on the website as his profile picture." But I get sent them that all the time. "Yeah, he's the new head of private clients," or "he's the new engineering quality manager," and it's just like, I'm sorry, it's just, no, you'll see it all the time. And the photographs do matter. I mean, many a picture has rescued a story. We've got coverage from a story, and sometimes it's because it's a nice photograph. And it doesn't have to be a professional. If you can afford it, great. Get a professional in, and they're worth their weight. It might be one decent photograph out the front of the building of your new office, of your new team. It might be 150 quid, but it's money well spent. It goes on the website. You can use it 3 or 4 times in different ways. And it's, as I say, money well spent. If not, do it yourself. You've all got the tools now. Mobile phone cameras even are plenty good enough, and it's just in the setup, and that's stuff you can read online. Even they'll just tell you how to take a good photo, and then that's kind of the difference. We'll use this is actually, again, this is in COVID. This was just before Christmas and the lockdown. So I just scooted down and said to Andy, get out the front of the building. I'll drive by, jump out my car, take a photograph. We won't have to get anywhere near each other, and then we'll use that photo. And you'll see there, I've been creative, because I've got Holborn even into the photograph in the background. So if anyone wasn't quite sure about the web address, it's in the photo. Hence the reason everyone's always photographed outside the front of their buildings. And it does make a difference. It won't be the only thing that gets you into the press, unless it's a remarkable photograph. And we all know what I mean by remarkable photograph. Usually one that people don't want shown. But normally it's just, again, professionalism, and it shows you care. If you send me that photograph on the left, we're not that bothered. The one on the right, and better with professionals doing them, show that you really value what you're doing, value your business, what it does, and how it supports its clients. And that's very important with the media, how you portray your business and how important it seems to you and what you do. Whether you make widgets or whether you make multi-billion-pound deals, it doesn't matter. You can all show the same love for your business. And that's what these photographs show. One on the left, not bothered, just send it out, see what happens. One on the right says, yeah, we'll go to a bit of trouble. Well, you know, Andy said he even put on a clean jumper. That's how much he loved the idea of having his photo taken. A clean jumper out the front of the building. And cleaned his hands. They're crossed because his hands were grubby because he'd been doing some work that morning. But it says a bit of love, which matters. And I know it can be tough to tell the boss, and we've had it a lot. Sometimes they won't want to pay for a photograph, and they will just send the one on the left, and they'll do it themselves or whatever. And it's worth just having that conversation and saying, just get a professional, just get someone in. There's usually someone around the corner, and they'll do it for anywhere 100 quid or something. And usually it's an hour. And I say to people, so in which case, if they say, I'll come down for 20 minutes, line up 3 or 4 shots, spread the cost. Doesn't have to be just Andy. Just take a few internal ones and post them on your website, use them for social media, a bit of product. The photographer's coming anyway. So make use of them. And then bear in mind, if you're sending it to a website, you'll probably get away with a 100K, a couple of 100K image in terms of image size. If you're targeting a magazine, they're going to want a 3 to 4 meg minimum image. They'll want a high res picture. They'll want it good quality. And because sometimes you'll define how big that picture goes. And if you're the one who sent the really nice 6, 7 meg that they can open up to half a page, and someone else who's got a slightly better story, but it's got a rubbish picture, guess who's going to get the full page? It'll be you. You're the one. You'll be really quite impressed. And you're giving the designers the opportunity to be quite artistic if you give them nice pictures to work with. The one on the left, absolutely guaranteed, will be just poked away like a little photo. They'll probably cut off most of your release, and it will just go, yeah, Andy was appointed. He's a new director, and you'll get 2 paragraphs. The one on the right, because of the width even, they'll want to run the paragraphs the same width and run it under. From a technical point of view, you're giving them a lot more space to occupy, so they will occupy it. Which way am I going? And then repurposing sort of works with where I was with the idea of the photographs is always look to see what else you can do. So if you're going to have a photograph taken and get a photographer down, think of the other things you can use photographs for and what that photographer does for you. And the same with the press release. Think what else you can do with that information. So once you've got it and you've sent it, often you'll have more information. The boss or whoever's talked to you or you're talking about or you've written down and thought all the way through the process, you'll have a load of information. And if you've addressed the problem for a client and they've quoted, you've got a case study. You can write a case study from virtually everything they've told you for the press release. So that's great because case studies are absolute manna from heaven in terms of selling. They really help sell what you do. Is a properly, nicely written case study. And conversely, you can approach the media with case studies. So a press release can be a really good case study, and it addresses a problem. And if it's a problem that your industry your sector copes with a lot, if it's carbon footprint, if it's HR, if it's people, things, training, all that sort of stuff, good case studies. They like good case studies. They make good press releases, and it's kind of a cyclical thing. A case study is a good press release. A press release is a good case study. And then you can take snippets from your press release and use them on social media. Excuse me. And if you're lucky enough to get coverage, this is key. You make sure you're the first, ideally, to grab that coverage and shout about it again on your own social media sites. You're the first to post it on your website, in your news section, to say, oh, look, the readers of Roofing Today have benefited from the advice of Stuart. And they talk about, and you point to it. Just don't be tempted, if they send you a magazine copy, don't be tempted to scan it and put the magazine front cover in your blurb on the website, because you'll get pinged for copyright infringement. I speak from experience. But it pays to write blurb, and what we do for a lot of our clients is, if you get coverage, and this is another go, you write the news piece, you put it on your own feed, and you say that the news of our new arrival, or our new piece of equipment, or of our new client win was covered by, and you just name one of the media. Don't name them all. Don't wait till the end. Do it every day as you get a new piece of coverage. Name each one. And then if you like, you can say, you can read it here and link to their website if they've put you on the website, because that might encourage them to link back. But also, what we will do, if it's a thought leadership or it's quite a meaty piece, is if you want to see the article, you can go here, click a link. But if you want to know what the article was, read it here, and then put the full copy of your press release on your site below that. So now you've got more copy going onto your website with lots of keywords that the SEO engine type things will enjoy. I have a person who does that for me. I don't do it, so that's why it sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about. But that's key, so that you're repurposing it all the time. You're always thinking, what else can I do? You don't just write your press release and send it and then keep your fingers crossed, and then you get one piece of coverage and go, oh, look, we got covered, and pass the magazine around the office or click a link. And if you're going to get coverage and you find that you're on a website, what did I put? Roofing Today or Glass Times, or the now unfortunately defunct Rubber and Plastic News, which was one of my favorites. Delightful title. If you appear in there, tell everyone in the business and tell everyone you know, and ideally they'll go and click the link and have a look. Send it around the office, get everyone to go and have a look at it, because what will happen is the analytics on that website at the other end will tell the website owner, therefore the editor probably, they've just had a big spike in interest in the story from XYZ Engineering. It might be from all the people who work at XYZ Engineering, but it doesn't matter to the analytics. What they'll see is a little spike, and they'll think, oh, that's interesting. It's generated a lot of interest. So the next time, in 2 months' time, when you send another story in, there's a greater chance of it being used, because they got that engagement, and that's what they're after. The media, and from a website point of view, they need engagement. They need to drive the figures, so that when they say we get 25,000 unique engagements per month, it drives up their advertising revenue. They get a greater opportunity to sell advertising on the number of visitors. So you're helping in that process, which is why they want content constantly updated, new content. And that's why, instead of, say, a press release, that's why from the point of view of a opinion piece, that can be even better, because that could cause argument, and then they love an argument. There's nothing better in the media, as you all know, and you're sure you're all on social media. If you post an opinion, someone else will have another one. And so it starts, and the back and the forth is all great for the websites. That's what they want. And out of that will come other articles and other opinion pieces. So it just self-perpetuates. And it's important that you've got that eye on it, that you don't just send the piece, get you one piece of coverage, sit back, smile, pass the boss his magazine, say, oh, look, it's in this week, and then don't do anything else with it. There's a lot of other things you can do with that valuable piece of content that you spent probably, I would say, a day, maybe, finding the story, working on your key messages, distributing to about 5 or 6 titles, chasing them up, and all the rest of it might cost you a day. So the return on investment could be huge, because how many of you read magazine adverts or the website adverts? No, it just doesn't really happen, because there's not that sense of credibility, and that's what you're hoping for with a published press release. what we're telling the world is, I've told somebody important, editor of a trade journal, a piece of news about my business or my organisation, and they've thought it important enough to post online or to post in the magazine. So it's got credibility now. They haven't questioned it, they've posted it up. So that's the credibility that an advert doesn't have. Because the advert, you can say what you like. We sell unicorns, we do, you name it, you can say anything you like pretty much. But in that context, in the press release, someone's effectively fact-checked it. And they've thought it worthy of putting in their magazine, on their website. And that's the credibility you get from the press release. So that's where the return on investment. It's unlikely, if I'm honest, in all my years of doing it, it's unlikely someone will pick the phone up the minute they see the press release and call you. So I've just seen your press release. Can you come round and quote me for X, Y, Z? But it's just the drip, drip, drip process of press releases that you're just constantly picking away at people. You're trying to stay front of mind, because the chances of you getting a press release published at the exact moment somebody wants your services is fairly remote. But over a period of time, you slowly creep into their consciousness and you're slowly becoming that name that they associate with legal matters, with air conditioning, with engineering supplies, with hygiene services. These are the sort of things that we're trying to do. You can advertise to back it up. You can do all the social media in the world, but all we're trying to do is stay front of mind. So when finally, after 7 months of thinking about it, a business goes, do you know, we could do with a new hygiene services supplier. We could do with a new, and they know who to speak to because that name's just been constantly in their conscious. It's just been there all the time. Every couple of months there's a new story about it. And you can also end up with the process where the media say, you've got an interesting business, you've done a lot of things, would you like to do a regular piece about, or maybe we could follow one of your apprentices through from the start to their sort of finish and how they're sort of progressing in their career, because that might be quite interesting. You know, we'd really like to see that. Could we do that? And you say, yeah, of course we could. And that's the payoff always, is that you're hoping for, is that someone thinks it interesting enough to want to hear from you on a regular basis, and the effort becomes theirs then, not yours. So instead of you trying to pitch all the time, and we've done it with people where you get a nice, particularly with law firms or accountancy or professional services, which matters to everybody, and there's always something new, is you'll get a regular column, and that's what we're always aiming for. We want a regular column of 450 words every month about some issue, and that's kind of manna from heaven for us. That's what we're actually sort of really always working towards. And then so that was Andy. I was pleased that they used my photo lots of times. But these were the important journals for them. They're in air conditioning, so it's air conditioning. What's the other one? Cube is facilities management. So, and press release, facilities management online. So these are all people, the people that read in this are all the people that are decision makers around air conditioning. So we achieve what we were hoping to achieve, which is getting their name back into this media. If we're going to talk about air conditioning, it's a tough ask. So you've got to find all the things around the edges that can get us in there, because they're always going to be a bigger firm that will talk about the policies or new innovation. But we can start to sort of just pick away at this in the background. I'm working on with them at the moment is a big project win. They've just won a contract for umpteen million, and I now know, because we've just had this in, if I give it 3 weeks, we can get a chance to go back in again, because the media are aware of us now. And content versus press release, which it comes back to a bit to the sort of repurposing, if I'm honest, where we're saying, what else can you do with your press release? And the content idea is just, I think most people know it's blogs, and that's what I've put there. Is if you're working in a business and they're asking you to write press releases, when you're talking to people, you say, yeah, that's fine. Keep your ears open, because they'll explain and give you far too much detail. They'll go into so much detail that you won't need, but they'll throw in things that you can then write and think, subject of blogs, social posts, animation, video, podcast. There's so much stuff that can come out of just having a conversation with a senior manager or a board director or a new partner that's come in. Why have they joined? Oh, because, and they'll give you all this potential for content, and content's key. The amount of work we do from a press release point of view is great, and if you get a backlink from a high authority trade website to your client's website, that's fantastic, absolutely brilliant. But if you then back it up with umpteen blogs, social posts, animation, video, all talking about similar subjects around that issue, then you'll fly up the rankings. So when you've got someone in a magazine and they've looked at air conditioning, and they type air conditioning, needing an air conditioning service in my office block, the chances of you coming up are much greater, and near I'm not going to say the top of page one, but near the first page or on the front page, near the top is much higher if you've got a press release out, because they've promoted it, you've put the press release on your website, you've then created content around that press release. So it's key to just keep going and not just think you've done it, fold your arms and think, yeah, great, I've done my press release, I've done what I was asked, when all these other opportunities can spring forth from one press release, or the discussion you have to have internally about that press release. And they can be subjective. As I'm saying there, you're held to a lower degree of external scrutiny, shall we say, than the releases you put into the public domain. So if you want to write a blog piece, you can be the number one law firm in the world, as far as they're concerned. You could be the best engineering company. You can write all that stuff. Nobody really cares. If you do it in the press have the right to say, prove it, or come back and argue if you're being too over the top. But on your own website, and I'm always staggered at how few companies really go to town on their own websites and their own social media posts, talking about the good stuff they do, their clients, how they solve problems, and how good they are at what they do, how their people are the best. And all that can come out of just that discussion you have. Because I do it now. I do it every day. I have client meetings all the time with people, and we're just doing a meeting about one press release. And then from that will come all these other subjects. So it's key to keep your ears open, and then just go wild. It's the sort of thing this year is for 2021, we've got go wild, and the other one is get stuff done, which is critical to the success, I think, of any business. Is too many are going to sit around and try and strategize the heck out of everything. And that isn't the purpose this year. I think you've just got to get stuff done. And that's the idea with the press release. If you've got a press release to write, don't put it off. Just get it done. Get a first draft done. Get it down on paper, read it a couple of times, get it signed off, and just get it out there and have a go, because that's going to be critical this year to thriving. We're sort of hoping that we've gone through survive and we're into thrive now. And then part of that is going to be get it done. Just get out there and get it done. Stop worrying about getting it absolutely perfect. When I said about the English, I've got press releases with clients and it goes back and forth, goes back off to comms, goes back to the client's comms team, and it can be a month and a half before you actually get it out there, and it's just soul destroying. Whereas sometimes even if you have to cut back on the information, sometimes it might mean taking the client out, and I know that's tough, the client quote, but sometimes you just won't get approval. It'll go round, particularly if you've done a piece of work for somebody like Virgin Media. I've got a client who works with Virgin Media. It's never going to happen. You'll never get a quote signed off. It just won't happen. So just either put spokesperson and make it up yourself, which we've done before now, or just don't include them and just write a shorter release and talk about it from your side and all the rest of it. Because if you do include it, if you include a client and you write a quote, usually I'd write a quote for the client and say, is this okay? Are you happy to say this? Send them the quote in advance when you've written the press release. Before it goes out, you send them that approval. They approve it. Fine, it's good to go. If you don't think you're going to get approval, don't include it. Because once you've asked and you don't hear from them, you can't send it. So you've either got to take it out and just get it out there. Don't wait 6 and 8 weeks thinking, oh, they'll come back and do something. The chances are they won't. It's not in their wheelhouse. They're not that interested. So better off just take it out and say, we've done this work for Virgin. We've done this. We've done the rest of it. And we think this and we think that, and send it out. You probably need approval if it's a big piece of work that's quite important. But usually someone further in the chain, maybe the project manager you're dealing with even on that project, could say, yeah, do yourselves a press release, but we won't quote. Don't quote us. Something like that is quite common. They don't mind you talking about it, but don't release the details, or don't tell them where you've built this data center. Don't talk about the security, which we have had, where, yeah, we've just installed, and then they wanted to discuss all the security they'd installed in this client's data center. And it was like, no, I don't think that's a good idea, really. So we didn't. That's for the clients. There are certain aspects of a press release, the work you do for clients, that are really within the gift of the client to talk about. They're not for you to talk about. So you stick to what you want to talk about, and then cover everything else off in your blogs and your social posts. And then that's what I get asked a lot. What's the point? Why draft and release press releases? Why do it? What's the point? And that's key to me. And I think at the moment I'm doing it with clients, and if particularly from an internal point of view, you've got dispersed teams spread all over the country, some of whom haven't been into the office. I talked to a firm this morning. They've had people out of the office for a year almost. They've not seen anyone else in the business. They don't know what the business is really up to. So a press release just shows you care about your business enough to take the time to write it. And not everyone does, or they give it to the comms team, and the comms team write it, and they send it to the media, and then they forget to tell everyone in the business. And that's often where a press release should go first. Once you've got a piece of coverage, tell everyone in the business, share it on the intranet, send it round on an email to say, oh, look at this, we've been covered in XYZ magazine. You know, Barry in marketing got this. And it doesn't matter. It just tells everyone you care and you're still here and you plan to be here for the future, because that's a big worry for a lot of businesses at the moment. And it's a worry for a lot of companies who've got suppliers. So when you put a press release up, a lot of your customers think, oh, thank heavens for that. They're still going to be here next year when I need them. And it shows you care. And it will attract new clients. It will. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been doing what I've been doing for 20 years. There is a payoff to it. And most of my clients I've had for years. You know, we've had them a long time because it works. A lot of the time it's because they can't be bothered to write themselves. And it actually shows I care about their business rather than them care about their business. But they care enough to get us the stories, to have the conversations. And usually what happens is you are so busy in your day-to-day jobs, particularly at the moment, you forget what you do is actually important. You forget what you do allows other businesses to do what they do. It's all part of this chain that works so very well. But some of them are very good at telling you. Bigger companies, they always say, are very good at it. And then you just have to have your piece of that action. You have to claim your side of the story and tell people what it is you do. It works brilliantly internally and it works brilliantly externally, but it's a long, hard process, PR. It's not a TV commercial, instant gratification, instant success, instant pick up the phone. This is a long process. And that's usually where PR from an agency point of view falls down, is if both of us aren't aware of that at the start of the relationship, that it takes a long time, but it starts to build credibility, it starts to build share of voice, it starts to build a whole sort of atmosphere and a tone around a business. And the return on investment measurements of PR is really tough. And it's been argued about for years and years and years, how you measure, how my client is expected to measure, or we're expected to measure those 4 examples I showed, what they're actually worth to my clients. I have no way, really. There's an old measurement of advertising equivalencies and all sorts of it. But generally, if I'm honest, you say to the client, it's more of a gut instinct. You'll know, you'll feel it. You'll get the inquiries. You'll see people will start to talk about your business. They won't, when you talk about, oh, Holborn, they won't go, ooh. They'll say, oh, yeah, I know. And they'll nod along and you'll be aware of that. And that's generally how it works. It does. And slowly but surely, you'll sell more. Because usually you're doing something your competitors aren't. And slowly you creep past them when they're not looking. You're in the blind spot. And then all of a sudden you're that annoying business that keeps turning up. You're the one that keeps being quoted. And then eventually, and it usually happens with the likes of law firms and accountancy and that, we start to get onto the media's go-to list. So the editor at Sky or the BBC, they want to comment on something now. And they'll go down the list and they'll just hit dial and they'll just ring, and whoever picks up first gets the comment. And you've got to get on that list. We try and get people on that list. It's tough, but if you're a specialist and you're good at what you do, you can do it. And they like small businesses that punch above their weight. Everybody does. You know what the British are like for an underdog story. Well, that's brilliant. We love it. And that's it. It keeps your name in the game, and networking is tough, as we know. We're all trying to do it, looking at screens, and it's really hard. Again, professional services, these big networking industries are all based around meeting and greeting, and that's tough. Because it used to be that you'd meet every month at the same seminar, same people, and eventually, finally, one of them would need your services at the point you were there having a glass of wine with them. Whereas now you're having to do that via Teams and Zoom, and it's just not great. So that's what this does, because outside of work, people are tending to now work at home, so they haven't got a commute. They're spending a bit more time on Google. They're spending a bit more time doing research. They're trying to find alternatives to what they do. If they have a bad experience with one supplier, they don't just tough it out now. They'll go on Google and they'll start to ask some questions. And then where we do some SEO work in press releases as well is, what are those questions? So sometimes it might be you speaking to your clients to try and understand what are the issues, but what are the issues you've solved for them, and how they talk, because how they speak and how they talk about your services are what other people who are looking for your services will be typing into Google. And if you can address those in your press releases and use those terms on your website, that's what happens. You're keeping your name in the game. You'll keep appearing all the time. And it does. It will deliver a good return on investment for the time you spend drafting 500 words. I absolutely guarantee it. If you've got a business and you want to get it out there, and it doesn't matter, I know what people worry about. They'll think, oh, I can't write a press release. Yeah, you can. The biggest thing is with an agency like mine is people employ us because, and I always say it sounds daft, because we can start with a blank piece of paper. And for most people doing press releases or any kind of marketing, often it's that blank piece of paper that gives them the problem. And that's why I say start with a paper and pencil, start scratching away, got some thoughts down, start typing. And when you've done it, yeah, 500 words is relatively simple. It's your business. You know your business like no one else. You should be able to write 500 words at the drop of a hat on any aspect of your business. So in the fact you've recruited someone new into the business, you're going to talk about why you've ready to recruit them. They're going to talk about why they've joined you. That's 500 words easily. And the return on investment for the time you've spent to do that will be huge. I can't put a number on it, and nor can anyone else in PR. Despite what they tell you, no one will. It's really hard. Then they'll talk about engagement and all these sort of nebulous terms they'll use, but actual gets the till ringing is really tough. We can't put a number on it, and how many times that these press releases have directly affected people's purchasing decisions, I couldn't tell you. And I know that's hard, because in marketing they say, if you can't measure it, don't do it. And so it's tough what we do, because it's more of a creative storytelling process than it is a marketing plan with a tick box exercise that we've done this, we've had an engagement, we've got this return, therefore we'll keep doing it, like you can with direct marketing or telemarketing and all these other forms of it. So it is quite hard, but from your perspective in your own business, it pays, I think, massively. And it's a good exercise to do as well. I was explaining to Charlotte earlier, just sitting down, trying to write through my thoughts on this got me to assess what I do and how we do it. And I think even just talking to people within your own business about aspects of it that you want to promote will create lots of interest internally again, but also spark other stories that are going to come, that are going to work for blogs and all the rest of it. And if you're not blogging, you should be, but that's a whole different thing for another day, isn't it? And that's it. I think it's a good investment. It'll prize more stories out of those within the business, and that's it. That's key. If you've got a decent sized business and there's few personalities in it, work with one person. I always say this: work with one person and let them become the advocate for what you do internally. So if you've got to write a press release because this person's joined or this department's done well, just concentrate on them. And then as soon as they get some coverage, guess what? Everyone else will come knocking at your door. You won't have to do any work then. They'll all come knocking at your door saying, well, I quite fancy that. I quite fancy being in the press. I wouldn't mind being, I'll tell you my story. And that's very powerful, is that slightly competitive edge that everybody in business has, that they see when someone else is in the media and someone else is talking about the firm and someone's covered in a press release, and they'll come and they'll start and they'll make your life easy then, because you haven't got to go looking for those stories. They'll come and find you. And that's, again, as I said earlier, I think that's key. I've never spoken to so many companies at the moment about internal communications, newsletters, intranets, competitions, Skype quizzes, you name it. They're all trying to just, I think they all realise that some people are so very disengaged at the moment, they might never get them back. They might never get them back. So, and a lot of companies, the people are a bit worried, obviously, all workers are a bit worried. Will we survive? So the fact that you're putting out press releases about all the good things, how you survive and you're planning for next year, we've had a good year, it's been tough, it's been challenging, it's this, it's that. But the fact that you're talking is such a positive for most people. And they forget to tell people. So just make sure you tell everyone within the business what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that was what I said earlier. If it's a specific thing, you've got an expert. I've got one engineering company, the chap in there, they chrome plate plastic for the automotive industry, and he's accepted as just about Mr. Chrome Plate. So if we started talking and then it was a case of, would he do a whole series on how to design plastic? Yeah, no problem. So it's just because and that all started from a couple of press releases around new equipment, new contracts and stuff. But Mr. Chrome Plate now gets a regular column. And you never know. You never know. Depends what the story you're telling. You've all seen it. You'll all have seen it on your local TV. You'll all have seen it in the national papers. Very small business suddenly gets them descending with cameras because they've done something unusual. They've won a big contract. They've done a superb piece of work. It doesn't matter what it is. There's just something, and that all starts with a press release. That'll be just something, and it's just captured someone's attention at a national or at a TV. And a lot of the journalists and the editors of a lot of the magazines, the papers, a lot of them are freelance now. So you might only have an editor, and he might look at it, she might look at it, they might pass it on, and you just never know who else. So sometimes you're dealing with an editor who also is a freelance writer for The Independent or The Times or for BBC Television, and they're all, it's a fairly, I don't want to use the word incestuous community, but you know what I mean, they're all interlinked, they all know each other. So once you start to get recognition, they might look at your little business and say, do you know what, this is fantastic. They've really done tremendously well through the pandemic with this solution that's helped all these businesses, and suddenly you're getting a phone call from BBC or Sky. I think recently Gymshark is a very good example. Very small business sprang up, and suddenly it's like worth £1 billion just from everybody going to gyms and all the rest of it. And huge, he's been on everything, Sky, you name it. He's only a young lad. I think he's 26, 27, something like that. It's a massive story. Wish it was mine. I wish he'd paid my peer. I wish he was buying my services, but he's not. And thanks for listening. That was it. That's kind of, I think I'm a bit ahead of schedule, but I told you once I get going. Any final questions? And the other thing was that those are the thing to take away with every story. There are 3 opportunities. Tell them what you're going to do, tell them what you're doing, and tell them what you did. So if you're going to recruit someone, you can get a story out to tell people you're going to recruit because usually it's because you've got growth. Usually it's because you're growing. You need to, and it's a great story about growth and all the rest of it. And we're looking for new, and tell them the department, or we need new quality engineers. We need what, and you may well get people knocking on the door and save recruitment costs. Tell them what you're doing. Once they've joined, there's your photo out the front of the building. Fantastic. Here they are. This is the new person. Great. Starts today. All optimistic. The future's looking rosy. And then a couple of months on, just do a reflective. We recruited X. They've done well. This is it. And they put a story out. So that one sort of story has now become 3, let alone all the other stuff associated with it from the terms of blogs and animations and videos that we did. So that's that in a nutshell is a press release.
Thanks, David. I think Jackie's just put a question in the chat box. Jackie, do you want to just come on to off your microphone and ask David the question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, David. That was really insightful. I was just wondering if there's a scientific way where you can track any publicity that you do get, or is it just a case of kind of Googling your name and seeing if anything crops up? Is it?
It is Google alerts, really. It's yeah. And because in the old days you used to have what called, well, I still do, to be fair. You have a clipping service, which was when it was just newspapers and magazines. You would have agencies. The big ones are still going strong, and they will actually read every single journal and newspaper every single day, every single week, every single month. And you say, I want XYZ engineering, and they'll clip out any coverage for XYZ engineering. But it used to, I mean, I'm going back 10, 12 years, the last time we used one. And even then it was £300-400 a month, which is huge on top of what you're spending for the release. And that's why I say to most people, you're better off being very targeted. So if you narrow down what you're trying to do, who you're trying to influence, and you end up with 3 or 4 titles, that's the best way of keeping an eye on the coverage, because you'll know whether they've used it because you can look at them. If you do mass emails, which is why we don't do them, you can't control it, and it just goes out into the ether, and you sometimes don't know if it's been covered at all, and it's really hard to track down. We've only got Google. I mean, we've got, well, I don't know now, 15, 17 clients, and yet none of them I would propose using a clipping service, because we control all the media contact, to be fair. So we generally know where it's gone. And as I said to Charlotte earlier, we don't, I must be honest, I don't do a huge amount of press releases. We tend to do more opinion, because we work with professional service firms a lot. We tend to do more opinion and thought leadership pieces. And that's usually one-to-one. So we'll be writing for Glass Times, and then we'll write a new version for Roofing Today, and then we'll write a new version for FMCG CEO or something. It's all the same story, but it's always a different version. But we know, because the editor will say, thanks very much, I'm using that on Tuesday. So we get that one-to-one back. And it's usually a better way than if we just kind of scatter it out into which again will work for some. If you're putting out a big press release from some of the big stories, BT or something, they won't do like we do. They will just send it out, whoosh, it goes on the wire, it goes on Newswire or AP and just goes out. And everybody then, all the news aggregators just pull it down, clip it up how they want and stick it on their website. Whereas we tend to do it more personally. And I would recommend for most smaller businesses that's how I'd approach it. I'd tend to just kind of, and to be fair, if you're dealing one-to-one with a journalist or an editor, you'll probably end up with a better relationship than we will, because they know we're the gatekeeper in the middle. So, and I'm probably doing myself out of business here with people, but you say, you could actually just think, I only want to talk to people in the licensing trade. So I'm just going to just talk to this, and I'm going to keep sending to caterer and hotel keeper or whatever. And eventually they will listen to you, and they will think, oh, that's good. Yeah. And you'll know, because they'll tell you when they've used it. They'll say, thanks very much, I'm using that on Tuesday. Or do you mind if I post that today on the website? And you'll be, yeah, no problem. So, no, I'm afraid, as far as I'm aware anyway, I wish there was a sort of a global, but it's just got, global just tends to mean Google, doesn't it, these days?
I have a question, if that's okay. It's in relation to, so if there's, for an example, if there's like a policy change in government, or specific to a certain sector, how would a business position themselves in being a spokesperson for that policy change? How would you go about? Would you prepare something beforehand to distribute, or would you? Is there a better way of doing it?
There is. That's kind of the key to what we do as a business. It tends to be that, exactly that. I've got a conversation tomorrow with a lawyer who's a VAT specialist, because the change comes in on construction VAT changes on the 1st of March or 31st of March this year. It was delayed from last year. And the idea there is they know what the changes are, because the government tell you. And then all the media are interested in is an opinion. So so what we'd do normally is approach that from a synopsis point of view. So I'll have a conversation with him. We'll work out exactly what the story is. This is the change. This is how it's going to affect people. This is how it might affect some businesses. Other businesses might be affected by this, And then we'll send usually a 200-word synopsis of what we think that is. And we'll fire that out directly to our editors and the trade press that we know. If you just send a press release, the trouble is they generally know it's a press release and they know you've sent it to everyone. Whereas we send a synopsis and we give them the option to come back to us and say, that's great. I've just done one now on force majeure with the whole business interruption stuff. And it's a bit late in the day, but we've still got 10, 11 trade magazines taking it off us because they just want it ironed out, the key points, but they'll come back from a synopsis point of view and they'll say, is there anything specific to the haulage industry? And then I go back to the lawyer and I say, anything for haulage? He goes, no. So and then it just means we turn the terms around. So instead of saying business, we say haulage business, and we say contractor. And then we explain what on earth force majeure contracts in there, all that means to them. And then we move on to the next one. But I wouldn't just send a press release. I would send it as a synopsis. I wouldn't think, so. And to be fair, that is a big area of our business, is change. as it is with all law firms. Or as a lawyer said to me once, I don't care whether it goes left or right. I just want change, because that's where I make my money, is change. Everything changes. And the rest of it is just, I wouldn't. I'd be ready in advance, because being first is always the best chance of getting coverage, being first off the blocks. But the trouble is, the big legal stuff, the really big stuff, there are massive law firms with massive, and there's always a big shark in every sector. And unless you're that shark, you've got to be quick. You've got to be nimble. And ideally, before you get to a really important release, you've already done what I said earlier, which is you've sent a few small ones. The press and the media are aware of you. They're aware you're a good business. You've got your finger on the pulse. You know what's going on. You clearly understand all the changes and everything in business and how good it is. And then suddenly you're the go-to person, because your release arrives and says, guess what? This change comes in, means this for taxi drivers. And they go, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And then you're the one that gets written up.
Thank you very much, David. Thanks for your time, and I'm sure everyone found it as in fact insightful as I did. So we've recorded this session, so we can share this afterwards. And also, David, if you don't mind sharing your presentation as well, I will forward that on to our attendees.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your time. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Very glad. See you later.